At 2 in the morning, a door shatters. Two officers storm into a quiet home, ready to drag someone away in handcuffs. But then they freeze, their eyes locked on a single jacket hanging by the door. Bold yellow letters spell three words that change everything: FBI. And the woman they came to arrest. Jess crosses her arms and waits. Asterisk, it was 2 in the morning when the knock turned into pounding. The kind of pounding that made walls shake and neighbors stir. Before she could even reach the door, it cracked beneath the force of boots, splintering into shards of glass and wood. Two officers in dark uniforms stormed inside, voices sharp, commands cutting through the silence of her small living room. But she didn't scream, she didn't beg, she didn't move. She simply stood in the hallway, her arms folded over her chest, her face calm as stone. For the men who broke her door, it was supposed to be routine, another late-night call, another suspect to pin down before dawn. But what they didn't expect was the silence. Not fear, not excuses, not even a word, just silence, and the piercing weight of her steady eyes. The woman standing before them was Maya Daniels. To her neighbors, she was quiet, private, the kind of person who kept to herself. But behind that calm exterior was a life that very few people could imagine. Maya had worn many uniforms in her time. Years earlier, she had carried the weight of service across the ocean, wearing combat boots in places where the ground still shook from distant bombs. She had seen brothers and sisters fall beside her, carried their faces in her memory, and buried her own scars deep beneath a silence that spoke louder than any cry. When she came home, the world moved on without her. The crowds clapped in airports, then turned away. The bills stacked up, the job offers faded, and the country she bled for often forgot the names of people like her. But Maya never complained. She simply kept walking, kept serving. This time not in the deserts overseas, but in the quiet war of justice here at home. The FBI jacket on her wall wasn't just fabric. It was the proof of battles fought in silence, the emblem of sacrifices unseen. And tonight, that jacket was about to speak louder than any badge. Carried by the men in her living room, the officers barked at her to cooperate, their hands hovering near weapons, their tone dripping with suspicion. But Maya didn't flinch. Her silence pressed against the walls like a rising tide. Every second stretched longer, heavier, until one of them noticed. His eyes flicked to the right, to the jacket hanging neatly by the door. Dark navy, gold letters, FBI. His breath caught. His voice stuttered. The other officer turned, and his face paled. Suddenly, the broken glass at their feet felt sharper. Suddenly, the cuffs in their hands felt heavier. The room was still. Maya didn't need to explain. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her silence was enough. Inside, their thoughts ran wild. They had barged into the home of a federal agent, a woman who had served this nation long before they'd pinned their first badge to their chest. And here she stood, in the wreckage they had caused. Without a single word of anger or fear, it was one of those moments when the line between authority and respect shifted. The men who came in with power now stood frozen, unsure, exposed. Maya's story was not just hers alone. It was the story of countless veterans who returned home carrying invisible wounds. It was the story of silent heroes who walk among us without asking for applause, who endured disrespect and suspicion in exchange for quiet dignity. In that tense living room, moral tension filled the air. Authority clashed with truth. Power clashed with honor. And silence, her silence. One of the officers finally lowered his head, shame flooding his face. The other unclipped the cuffs from his belt and slipped them back without a word. They both knew there was nothing they could say that could erase what had just happened. Maya finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. Respect is not given by force. It's earned by sacrifice. The words cut through them more sharply than any order they had shouted minutes earlier. Another moment of silence. Then, slowly, the men backed away. Their boots, so heavy on the way in, seemed smaller now, quieter, as if the house itself refused to let them leave untouched by what they had seen. The door was broken, but her dignity stood unshaken. The glass was shattered, but her silence had turned it into a mirror, forcing them to see themselves as they truly were. And when the officers stepped outside, the night seemed colder. For the first time in their careers, they realized power without respect was nothing but noise. Maya stood alone again in her living room, the soft night air brushing against her skin through the broken frame. She didn't cry, she didn't tremble. She simply looked at the jacket on the wall, a quiet reminder that battles aren't always fought with weapons, and victories aren't always shouted. Sometimes, the strongest act of defiance is silence. Honor does not speak loudly, she whispered to herself. It stands, even when everything else falls. Her words lingered in the air, soft but unshakable. And though the officers had left, the lesson of that night would follow them and anyone who heard this story forever. Respect is not about uniforms or titles. It is about the unseen battles people fight when no one is watching. Maya's silence carried the weight of every veteran, every quiet hero, every person who has been underestimated or disrespected yet refuses to bend. If this story moved you, share where you're watching from in the comments. Tell us what respect means to you. And if you believe stories like Maya's deserve to be told, make sure you subscribe, because sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths.